Hey, happy Friday. If I look different this week, that is because I upgraded my camera, and if I sound different this week, that is because I have a cold. Anyway, this week Microsoft's plans for AI go up in flames, Google shows us what sideloading will look like on Android, and Samsung revamps its entire foldables lineup. Welcome to the Friday Checkout. This video was sponsored by Insta360. Okay, for my first story of the week, we have two different reports claiming that Microsoft's rollout of AI is not going smoothly. First, the ever-reliable Zach Bowden at Windows Central says that Microsoft quietly scrapped plans to bring Copilot to notifications and settings on Windows 11 as it moves to reduce AI bloat across the OS. Now, Zach specifically referred to a few demos that Microsoft did in 2024 that would have seen Copilot branded options to reply to notifications with AI suggested files and such. And then, for example, also another one where you'd have a Copilot shortcut to perform actions without opening apps. Even more interesting is that Zach heard that, quote, the company is moving to reduce AI bloat across Windows 11 this year and is striving to be more tactful about where the Copilot brand and AI experiences appear in the system apps and interfaces. This is all part of a larger effort to address major criticism and concern from users who believe Windows 11 has become too bloated and enshittified with AI. Wait, even Microsoft realizes this by now? That's pretty wild. The full report, as usual, is linked in the description, but there's also a second report. The Financial Times now also says that Microsoft is reportedly considering suing OpenAI after the company signed a $50 billion deal with Amazon to run their next frontier model on AWS instead of Azure, and on a related note, Microsoft also publicly announced that they would rejig their Copilot teams, perhaps as a result of this as well. Mustafa Sulaiman, the current AI leader in Microsoft, will hand over the job of trying to convince you to use Copilot, and will instead be tasked with building the company's own in-house models, which would allow Microsoft to compete against the likes of ChatGPT directly. In other words, they're trying to ditch OpenAI's models before OpenAI ditches their servers. Which means Microsoft has AI troubles on two fronts. Consumers don't really like what they're doing, and their biggest AI partnership is kind of a mess too. Ouch. Okay, for my second story of the week, Google has just shown us what installing an app from a non-verified developer will look like, and it's kinda wild. So you've probably heard by now that Android will soon require verification for developers, even if they're making apps that you'll want to install outside of the Play Store. Android will just refuse to install them if the developer is not verified. That obviously goes against the idea of Android being an open platform. There was a lot of user pushback against that, and so Google said that there'll be an alternative flow for advanced users, and that's what we're seeing now. Google's new flow starts with Step 1, a pop-up that will ask you to confirm that you aren't being coached while you're trying to install an APK file yourself. You'll have to select No one is instructing me, which is fair enough. Then in Step 2, you'll have to restart your phone and re-authenticate, which would cut off remote access and any incoming phone calls, which would make it harder for a scammer to guide a gullible person through an installation. In Step 3, there's a 24-hour waiting process to again act as a hurdle against scams. And finally, in Step 4, you now have the choice to enable unverified installs either temporarily for 7 days or permanently. And I think this is perhaps not the worst trade-off. Yes, it will make installing apps from outside of the Play Store a little bit less convenient, and the 24-hour waiting period is a little bit odd, but it will also just be pretty easy to do. You only have to do it once, and anybody who actually wants to do this will be able to, so I think it's fine. Okay, and then for my third story of the week, Samsung is completely revamping its foldable business. First, the Trifold has now officially been discontinued. Production has been stopped and there will no longer be any restocks. The phone only went on sale in the US in January, and every batch that Samsung made sold out pretty much immediately, so it's certainly not for a lack of interest. Some speculation that I've seen online claims that the memory prices are partially to blame for this somehow, and that the Trifold already operated on razor-thin margins, but I find this a little bit hard to believe on its own. Instead, we got a new leak claiming that Samsung's Trifold sequel is already being in the works, and that with this generation, Samsung focused on reducing the, quote, complexity of the design. So Gen 1 was most likely over-engineered and kind of just a proof of concept to check whether there really was demand for this product category, and now that they know that there is, they can make something that is much more efficient for mass manufacturing. Anyway, a slidable phone is apparently also on the menu for 2027, and Samsung is also preparing to launch a wide version of their Fold this year, which would compete against the rumored iPhone Fold form factor, which is also going to be short but wide. I find it funny that everyone loved the first Oppo foldable that had this exact form factor, but then nobody copied it, and yet when Apple comes out with this design again, it's suddenly back on the menu again. Okay, and as for our release monitor, we start with a car. BMW revealed the i3, the first sedan of their extremely important Neue Klasse. On top of a new design, they also claim a 440-mile EPA range or a 559-mile WLTP range, which is achieved through a much more efficient drivetrain and lower weight. German EVs are starting to not suck. Next, Apple unveiled the AirPods Max 2, which looks the same but now includes a new H2 chip, better noise cancellation and sound quality, and also a bunch of new features such as adaptive audio, live translation, and more. Apple leakers were surprised why they didn't hear about this product before it came out at all, but I guess there was just so little to leak that nothing actually came out. And talking of Apple, Spigen also continued to expand its retro Mac-inspired accessory lineup with the LS MagSafe wallet, which looks kind of like a floppy drive that holds 3 to 4 cards. And then there's also an AirPods case, which looks just like a mouse basically. Not exactly practical, but undeniably fun. And certainly not practical is that Casio released a $600 premium calculator this week. It's called the S100X and it was made with traditional Japanese lacquer because of course it was. I don't think most people should buy a $600 calculator, but as usual, the links to that and everything else are in the description, and now let's move on to the brief. NVIDIA released DLSS 5, their next-generation AI upscaling technology for video games, and for the most part, gamers really seem to hate it. Unlike previous generations, it doesn't just seem to upscale resolution, but it basically invents details where there weren't any, which could potentially ruin the artist's intent, and gamers also say that it has basically the same look that we associate with AI slop. Jensen interestingly doubled down on saying that the gamers were wrong, developers had control over how the technique got applied to their game, but I don't think calling gamers wrong has ever convinced them of literally anything, so unsurprisingly this didn't work here either. Next, Instagram will now stop supporting end-to-end encrypted DMs after the 8th of May. A blog called Pionica Web found this random update in Meta's support page, which wasn't announced anywhere, so I guess the company was hoping to sweep the change under the rug in a classic Meta move. And when The Verge asked them why, Meta said that very few people were actually using the feature. And of course they weren't, because it wasn't turned on by default and the app also didn't really explain it anywhere. Meanwhile, I promise this is not a transition to an Incogni sponsor segment, but this week the FBI has also just admitted that it is buying data that can be used to track people, such as location data, and they're doing so specifically by buying it off of commercial data brokers. Cool. They're also doing this without warrants now, which they explicitly said that they would stop doing, but I guess the data is just there. It's juicy, you can just get it, it's tempting, so they just got it. What can you say? And talking of government shenanigans, Moscow has now been hit with what people call a digital lockdown for well over a week, as the government has been shutting off big parts of the mobile internet. This follows the government creating a whitelist for apps like the government-backed Macs, which they want to force their citizens to use instead of the open web, and in parallel the Kremlin also continues to actively crack down on services that aren't approved, such as Telegram. Meanwhile, in somewhat related news, Firefox said that it will start bundling a free VPN into their browser starting on the 24th of March. You'll be able to use 50 gigabytes a month for free, and you should theoretically not have all the privacy concerns that you'd have with most other free VPNs. Nice. Meanwhile, in more free news, Gemini Personal Intelligence is also running out to free users. The examples they showed are, for example, a user asking Gemini for help with their Chromecast, and then the assistant figuring out which version of the Chromecast they have, when they bought it, what TV it is connected to, etc. That sounds both pretty creepy and totally something that I can see many people using if it really works. And you might have also noticed by now that I've just launched a brand new YouTube channel called Submerged, focused on diving. And most of the shots that you see on that channel, both below and above water, are from my sponsor Insta360's Ace Pro 2. It's my favorite action camera due to its awesome image quality. It has a huge 8K 1/1.3 inch sensor, Leica Sumrit lenses, and advanced AI chips for nailing the colors even in challenging lighting conditions like when you're diving, and also a really impressive range of accessories like a proper cage for photography, multiple exchangeable lenses, a photo printer, and more. With the Leica color profiles, I even sometimes use it as a street photography camera. Meanwhile, for video, you can shoot really high quality footage at 8K 30 or 4K 120 FPS. Just a very unique device that has captured many of my favorite memories ever. The body is really nice and sturdy, the flip-up screen makes filming yourself really easy, and you even get a really nice set of microphones with a great built-in windshield. The device itself is water resistant up to 12 meters, and if you want to go deeper, the dive case is also rated up to 60 meters. Note that the case availability depends on the market. Stabilization is fantastic, so you can use it for really dynamic shots without issues, and what I personally care about the most is the image quality, and here the camera really shines, especially in difficult lighting scenarios. If you've ever shot videos underwater especially, you'll know how difficult it is to get the lighting, the color, and the clarity right, but the Ace Pro 2 detects that it is underwater and it adjusts the image settings to fit the scenario automatically. Like, take this video, it's shot at about 20 meters depth in a dark swim-through. Most cameras would really struggle here, but this one does just fine. Overall, it's just a really impressive device. And the first 10 people who order the videography bundle with my link will get 20% off and also a free mini 2-in-1 tripod with their order. So be sure to use my link in the description, and I'll see you next Friday.